One thing that's interesting as you look at the life of Jesus is that although he was good, although he was moral, although he was righteous, he really seemed to enjoy, if not prefer, hanging out with people who were immoral, who were irreligious, who were ungodly, and who were unrighteous. Now, the reason why that's odd is because if Jesus came from God as he said he did, and he was such a good and moral man, you would think he would be attracted to all the religious people and all the moral people who were good and upright people, but just the opposite is true. He was attracted to the people who were nothing like him. He was attracted to the people who were at the bottom of the moral ladder in his society, and not all the good, righteous, religious people. Now, the thing that's even more bizarre is not only did Jesus like the people who were nothing like him, but the people who were nothing like him liked him. The people who were nothing like Jesus, he didn't just like them, they liked him. And although they would never be that holy, they would never be that righteous, they would never be that good, they were not intimidated to be in the presence of Jesus, even though they might have been thinking, if this guy only knew what my daily life was like, if he only knew what my marriage was like, if he only knew about my spring breakdown at the Sea of Galilee, if he only knew what I was thinking right now, there's no way he would like me. But he liked them, and people who were nothing like him liked him. And it was the religious people of the day, the moral people of the day, the people who were the churchgoers, the supposed to be close to God people, who were the ones who were offended by Jesus because he liked the immoral, irreligious people. Now, the reason why I can't get over this is because today, in our community, and in our state, and in our country, at all the churches, the people who gather tend to be the religious people, tend to be the upright people, tend to be the church people, while the unrighteous, the irreligious, the unchurched people are the ones who are staying away. And the reason why I can't get over that is that means the church today is having the opposite effect that Jesus had on people. We are having the opposite impact that Jesus had on people, because the people who are immoral and irreligious flocked to be near Jesus. And the reason why I can't get over that is because this might be new to you, but Jesus said that the church is his body. That when someone is with the church, not me as an individual, not you as an individual, but with the church, being the hands and feet of Jesus, that is as close as we can get to Jesus on earth, because we are the body of Christ. Yet all over our community and all over a country, it looks like the church is having the opposite effect that Jesus had. Now, why is that? Today, we're going to look at a series of parables that Jesus taught. And in this series of parables, he gives us the answer to these questions. He tells us why he liked the people who were nothing like him. And we discover why the people who were nothing like him liked him, and we discover why it was the religious people and the church-going people who were turned off by Jesus. And what's more important than the answer to the question, because the answer isn't that complicated, the question is, are we willing to embrace the answer as the local church? Because our willingness to embrace the answer as the local church is going to completely dictate whether or not your faith will grow, whether or not people will love the church, and whether or not we will have anything to show for ourselves when Jesus comes back. Well, today we're going to be in Luke chapter 15, where Jesus told perhaps three of his most famous parables that he ever told. If you're new to Bible study, a parable, it's when Jesus told a story in order to illustrate a spiritual truth. It's a story he made up, it never happened, but he's got a group of people and he wants to communicate something, and he was a master storyteller, so he would say, well, it's kind of like this. And in his parables, somebody usually represented God and somebody usually represented us, and as we listen to the story, we discover something about God and we discover something about ourselves. Now, Luke, the gospel writer, gives us the context for these parables. It says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him. Now, in that day and age, like in every culture, there's good people and there's bad people, then there's the lowest of the low, the real scumbags. Well, in their generation, there were righteous people, there were average people, and then there were sinners, but even within sinners, there were categories. There were your garden variety sinners, and then there were your prostitutes, and then there were the tax collectors, the bottom of the cesspool when it came to sinners in their generation. Yet, Luke tells us, this biographer of Jesus, that they were all gathering around to hear him. They couldn't stay away from him. He was righteous, he was holy, he represented God, yet they were not turned off by him. These were people who could not even go to the Jewish temple to offer sacrifices. That's how unclean they were. Yet they flocked to be in the presence of Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered. Now, you know what that sounds like. Some of you work in a place where there's a lot of muttering. Some of you go to school in a classroom where there's lots of muttering. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they were the spiritual elite, okay? They were the church people, and they were good. They were moral, they were upright, they didn't lie, they didn't steal, they didn't cheat. They were good people, they were churchgoers, but when they saw that Jesus, who claimed to be from God, was attracting all the moral filth, they muttered, "This man welcomes sinners, and worse than that, he eats with them." Oh, that makes him unclean to be in the presence of sinners, and they can't get over that. So Luke continues. Then Jesus told them this parable. Now, this parable is in response to what? The religious elite can't get why Jesus is attracted to sinners. That's why Jesus is telling this parable. He says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Now, I love the approach Jesus takes there, because he's going to drop the hammer on him in a little bit, but he starts in a very innocent way. Let's pretend you have 100 sheep and you lose one. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? To which everyone in the audience, Pharisees, teachers of the law, sinners, tax collectors, everyone in the room says, well, that's exactly what I would do. If I had 100 sheep and I lost one, that represents a significant amount of value and worth. I would go after it and look for it until I found it. And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." To which everybody in the audience goes, "Yep, that's what I would do." So what's the first point Jesus is making? If you're filling in blanks on your notes, you can do this. When something is missing, you focus on what is lost to the exclusion of what is secure. When something is missing, you focus on what is lost to the exclusion of what is secure. How many of you are chronic car key losers? You just lose your car keys all the time. Whoever came to church with you will raise your hand for you if you don't put it up. When you lose your car keys, you do not pull out your driver's license and say, "Well, I still have you, buddy," right? No, now, your driver's license is important, isn't it? The 99 sheep are important, aren't they? But it's secure right now, and when something is missing, you focus on what is lost to the exclusion of what is secure. If you've ever lost a debit card before, you don't pull out your credit card and say, "Well, I still have you." No, because your credit card is secure, and you get laser focused on finding that missing debit card. Jesus is saying something that is universally true. When something is missing, you focus on what is lost to the exclusion of what is secure. So before they can necessarily do the math, Jesus keeps right on going with another parable. Now, he could have stopped at this point. He's made his point. What's his point? These people are lost, and God's preoccupied with the fact that something's missing. But this is so important to the heart of Jesus, and this is so important to the heart of God, that he is going to layer parable upon parable to make his point emphatically clear. I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner, over one person who is far from God, over one person who does not have faith in God, over one person who is relationally distant from God, who repents. Repent means I'm turned around now. I'm going towards Jesus now. I love him now. I trust him now. Over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. They're already Christians. They already have faith. They're already going to heaven. Well, aren't they important? Of course they're important, but they're secure. And heaven rejoices. Heaven throws a party. Heaven celebrates when one sinner is found. Okay, he continues. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Now, these are not like quarters, nor are these like silver dollars. But in that generation, women did not get any inheritance from their father, but when she got married, her father would give her a dowry to give to the groom when they got married. So these would be like coins, so this would represent her dowry. And many times in that culture, they would even hang them or suspend them from a headband, and it'd be like her diamond engagement ring, so everyone would know this woman is engaged. And it was the father's way of saying, hey, when you marry my daughter finally, you get all this money. I mean, she always burns the meatloaf, but hey, you get these coins. So that was her dowry. Now imagine Jesus says she loses one. This would be like, in our generation, a diamond falling out of your engagement ring. Now imagine the diamond fell out of your engagement ring. What would you do? Jesus says, does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? To which everyone in the audience would say, yep, that's exactly what she would do. And I know that's what she would do, and let me tell you why. When Kathy and I had been married about 5 or 6 years, she lost her diamond ring. Now, the reason why she lost it is she took it off when she went to bed. She put it on a tissue box on top of her bedside stand, and it got knocked into the tissue box. And she had forgotten that she took it off there. And I don't blame her, because we had 2 children under the age of 3. We couldn't remember our address. We couldn't remember our phone number. No, she can't remember where her ring is, all right? So when her diamond ring goes missing, she got frantic. She said, I have to find it. Where is it? Now, never once when her diamond ring was missing did she say, that diamond ring is only a symbol of my husband's lifelong commitment to me. I lost my ring, but I still have my husband. Okay? He needs some training, but he's not lost. I know where he is. I only lost the ring. She didn't say that. You know why? Here's why. When something is missing, you focus on what is lost to the exclusion of what is secure. So this woman loses her silver coin, and it's like her engagement ring, and she's frantically searching and cleaning the house until she finds it, and she's lighting a lamp because it's going to take her all night. She is not going to bed until she finds it, and everyone says, yeah, that's exactly what she would do. Here's the point. And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Now, at this point, the audience is probably starting to catch on with the point of these stories, right? The Pharisees and the teachers of the law are like, okay, I get what he's saying, they're lost. And the tax collectors and the sinners are like, I think he's talking about us. I think we're the lost sheep. I think we're the lost coin, but we're not lost. We're right here in the presence of the Son of God. But before anyone could ask any questions, Jesus is going to roll right into the next parable, and now he's going to tell what is perhaps his most famous parable, the parable of the prodigal son. Now, Jesus did not name the parable the prodigal son. He did not name any of his parables. People named them after the fact, so we would know which ones we're talking about. The word prodigal does not mean lost. Prodigal means to be extravagantly wasteful with your money, to be ridiculous in the way you create and invent wasteful ways to spend your money. That's what it means to be prodigal. And Jesus is going to tell a parable about someone who is prodigal. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. Now, he's upping the ante. Lost sheep, lost coin, lost son. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. Now, this is unthinkable in any generation, especially in this ancient culture. That a son would walk up to his father and say, Father, the only reason I'm still hanging out at home is because I'm only waiting for you to die, because when you die, I get half of your inheritance, I get my cut. So I've got an idea. Let's just pretend you're dead and fast forward to the end when I get all my stuff. That way I don't have to hang around here anymore and I can just be on my way. The audience would have gasped. Pharisees and tax collectors, everyone would have gasped at the audacity of the son. But it's not a real story, never happened. It's just a parable. Jesus is making a point. So he divided his property between them. People are even more shocked that the father went along with it, because we would think he would just write him out of the will at that point. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. So he liquidated whatever he had to liquidate. He got all the cash he could get, and he had a party, and he had a party, and he had another party, and he had all kinds of new friends, and he did not get a job, and he did not invest his money, and he did not listen to Dave Ramsey and pay off his debt. He just partied until he blew through everything. All of it gone, squandered, partied away. And as soon as he spent his last dollar, Jesus tells us in the parable that a severe famine hit that region, which means they were going into a severe economic recession right as he ran out of money. It was a worst case scenario. He goes hungry. He needs to figure out how he's going to stay alive. He takes a job feeding slop to pigs. Now, at this point, the Pharisees would have loved the parable because pigs were unclean animals to Jews, and they're like, finally, I like this parable. This kid's getting what he deserves. He's feeding pigs now. And Jesus tells us in the parable, the young man got paid so poorly, he longed to fill his stomach with pig slop. That's how poor and broke and destitute he was. And finally, one day, he has an idea. My father was a fair employer, and his hired hands always ate 3 square meals, and he always treated them fairly. And here I am wishing I could eat pig slop. Maybe I can go home and I'll ask for a job. I'm not going to ask to be forgiven. I don't deserve that. I'm not going to ask to have my place back as son in the family. I don't deserve that. I just want a job. Maybe I can get a job as a hired hand, and maybe it's likely, maybe it isn't likely, but hey, what does he have to lose? He wishes he could eat pig slop. So he starts walking home, flat broke, barefoot, walking home. And he's getting a speech ready. Okay, what's my speech? How am I going to rehearse this? And Jesus tells us in the parable that when the son came into view of his father's home, his father was looking for him and waiting for him. And when he saw his son coming home, he left with donkeys full of cash. He came home barefoot and broke. And when he saw his son, the father had compassion. He didn't get the lecture ready. He didn't run him off. He was filled with compassion. The reason why some of you need to hear that today is because at some point in your past, you said, God, gotta go, see ya. And now you're wondering if you actually turn around and try to come back to God, how will you be received by Him? The answer is He will be filled with compassion. Some of you who are Christians, but you've got some stuff going on the side that is secret and you don't think anybody knows about. And you think to yourself, well, what if I bring that to God? What if I bring that into God's presence? How is He going to respond to that? The answer is compassion. Your Heavenly Father wants you to come to Him, and He will have compassion. Here's what happened. But his father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Why? Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. He wasn't lost like, where's my son? He is lost as in, your heart is far, far, far away from me. But when he comes back home, and the reason why his father sent him away is because he was already far away from him in his heart. He says, fine, your heart is far away from me. I'm not going to hold on to you. I'm going to let you go. But when he came back, it's because he wanted to be back with his father, and his father welcomes him home, puts with a robe on, sandals on his feet, ring on his finger, and throws a big party, and they began to celebrate. And here's why they began to celebrate. When someone is missing, you focus on who is lost to the exclusion of who is secure. And that's what our Father in heaven is preoccupied with, and He celebrates. There's a party in heaven when one sinner repents. Now, not everybody's in a party mood, it turns out in Jesus' story. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing, so he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. When someone feels anger, do you know why they feel anger? It's because they feel someone took something that is owed them. He feels somebody owes him something, so the response is anger, and he refused to go into the party, so the father comes out to him. So his father went out and pleaded with him, but he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him?" "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours." Son, this is all yours. It's all going to be yours. You're the new head of this estate. It's all coming to you. Everything I have is yours, and you've always been with me, which is what I want more than anything, is for you to be with me. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And do you know how the older brother responded at this point? You won't know till heaven, because that's the end of Jesus' parable. It stops right there, and right as everyone's like, well, what's he going to do? Is he going to join the party? Is he going to stay bitter at his brother? What's going to happen? Jesus says, drops the mic, walks away. Why does he stop the story here, right when we're ready for the conclusion? Why is he telling the parable in the first place? Because the religious people couldn't understand why Jesus, who claims to be from God, is attracted to the people who are immoral and irreligious, and why he welcomes them. Jesus said, "I welcome them because when someone is lost, you focus on what is missing to the exclusion of what is secure." But you're being an older brother who's angry because you think that you did something by yourself to be born into this family. And because you think you deserve to be part of this family, like you chose to be part of this family, like you earned your way into this family, you think you deserve something from me, even though you forget everything I have is already yours. So there's a couple important points that Jesus is making. And these important points will influence whether or not the church today is going to be like Jesus, and whether or not the church today is going to be attracted to people who are immoral and irreligious, and whether or not immoral and irreligious people are going to love the church. Okay? Here's the first thing. The loving Father is preoccupied with whoever is missing. Older brothers are preoccupied with themselves. The loving Father is preoccupied with whoever is missing. The older brother is only worried about himself. And today, I wonder at times if God looks down from heaven at His church on earth and He says, I'm missing some people. My sheep is missing. My coin is missing. My ring is missing. My kids are missing. And I'm preoccupied with them because you're missing. And church, I love you. I died for you. You're my people, and you're secure. Your sins are forgiven. You're going to heaven. But you don't even seem to care that my lost people are missing. You're just preoccupied with yourself. And did I like the music? And did I like the sermon? And I hope this gets out on time. And I like this, and I don't like that. And why didn't I get a vote? And how come nobody called me? You're preoccupied with yourself, and you've completely lost sight of the fact that everything I have is yours. It's called heaven. I don't know if you've checked the ratings. It's getting some sweet 5-star reviews. Even the people who've had the near-death experiences just drive by and say, that place looks awesome. I want to get in there. That's the place to be. And it's yours, but we get preoccupied with ourselves, forgetting that the whole estate of the Father is ours, and God's looking down from heaven and saying, come on. I'm searching for my lost children that Jesus died for. Don't you even care? That leads us to our second point. The church is at its best. We are at our best when our hearts break with God's heart. And when we celebrate what God celebrates. What you celebrate matters because what you celebrate shows what you value. And Jesus says that all of heaven celebrates when one sinner repents. And what breaks God's heart is when one person is far away from Him relationally, and He throws a party when one person comes back to Him relationally, which means if we are going to be like Jesus, and if we are going to attract people who are nothing like Him or nothing like us, it means our hearts must break with whatever breaks God's heart. And we love to celebrate when God is celebrating. Now, I want to break this down and make it very simple and practical and accessible for us today. As a local church, as we apply this in our congregation, there are 3 commitments that we must make if we are going to be a people that have hearts that break for what breaks God's heart. And if we are going to celebrate what God celebrates, these are the 3 commitments we have to continually make, and it's easy to lose sight of all of them because it's a little bit easy for all of us to become older brothers. So here's the commitments. First one is this. We will shine searchlights, not security lights. We will shine searchlights. That's hard to say. Say that 5 times fast. We will shine searchlights. Don't do it. I'm just talking. Not security lights. What do I mean by that? Security lights are all about keeping bad people out. Searchlights are looking for lost people. The church loses alignment with the heart of our Father in heaven when we are trying to keep the bad people out rather than searching for people who are lost and are far away from God. Now, part of the reason why churches do this is because if bad people come into church, then things are going to get a little unsettled, and things are going to be a little uncomfortable, and things are going to be a little bit messy. But this would be like a Coast Guard ship going out to a shipwreck and looking at all the survivors treading water and saying, "Excuse us, we're here to rescue you, but would you mind toweling off before we pull you out of the water because we don't want to get our boat all wet and messy." But that's what the church does when it's at its worst. When you clean up, when you get your act together, when you're flying straight, then you can come into the church. But isn't the truth, come on, isn't the truth that a lot of us, maybe all of us, are still toweling off ourselves? But that didn't stop Jesus from pulling us out of the water. So let's be like Jesus. Let's turn off the security lights and start shining the searchlights, because lost people matter to Jesus, and heaven celebrates when someone is found. So that's our first commitment. We'll shine the searchlights, not the security lights. The second one, we will empower members, not pacify members. Okay. Some of you are members of this church. That means you've taken Starting Point, you've taken First Group, you've said, I'm all in, you can count on me, I'm going to support the ministry of this church, I'm part of the ministry of this church, I am this church. And our commitment is to empower members, not pacify members. What do I mean by that? In some churches, the goal is to keep everyone happy. Okay? If we just keep everyone happy and satisfied and content and comfortable, then we're being successful as a church. That is not biblical. Ephesians 4 says that the reason why there are leaders in the church is to equip God's people for ministry, to empower God's people for ministry. My job as a pastor is to equip and empower people to be ministers in the kingdom. So many churches, it's just the same group of people week after week, taught by the same preacher week after week. When Jesus said you're supposed to make disciples, we think that means just talking to the same group of people every week, and they never make disciples out of anybody else. We're supposed to go. We're supposed to minister. We're supposed to do. We are the church, and my role is to empower you. I'm never going to try and pacify you. What that means is there are going to be some decisions that everybody doesn't agree on. That's just the way it is. We're too big to have everyone agree on every decision. Okay, some of you are already mad because we pushed the bleachers back in, and you're thinking, I like to sit on the top row of the bleachers. I'm sorry, we took that away today. That's just gone. But we want to empower you with the gospel to be disciples and to make disciples. And that leads us to our third commitment. And I get the most pushback on this one. I'll tell you that right now. So go ahead and get your comments ready. We will strive to reach people, not keep people. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we're trying to offend people. That's not what that means. It means that many churches become almost territorial with the people who go to that church. Almost possessive of the people who go to that church. You don't belong to Hope if you go to church here. You belong to Jesus. Whatever dollars you give to this ministry, they do not belong to Hope. They belong to Jesus. Whatever time you volunteer here, that does not belong to Hope. It belongs to Jesus. We cannot be close-handed and try to keep things to ourselves or keep people here, keep them happy, keep them here, and then we'll grow a big church. We're here to reach people. And if at any point you say, I feel like my ministry is at a different church or in a different place or in a different location, we will bless you here. Because you don't belong to us, you belong to Jesus. And the mission that Jesus gave His church is to go out and reach people, not keep people. To go out and reach people and send them, not to keep everyone in-house. So that's what we want to do as a local church. We want to reach people, not keep people. We want to empower people, not pacify people. We don't want to be an older brother who's all about himself. We want to be a loving father who's part of the rescue mission. Now, how does a church keep to these commitments? Because what almost inevitably happens, it seems, and I've seen this happen in so many churches, and we are not immune from this. What happens is over time, over years, the church seems to increasingly become about itself, its services, its members, and perpetuating what we do. It becomes institutionalized. Last week I said that the Church of Jesus is a movement that is characterized by love, but if we're not careful, it becomes an institution that is concerned about keeping itself going. So how do we keep to these commitments? The answer is actually in the parable that Jesus told. The only way for the lost son to come home actually was at the expense of the older brother. Because if he is in line to now receive everything from his father, that's actually his ring and his robe and his sandals and his fattened calf, and he's taking a piece of his estate. The only way the younger brother can come home is at the expense of the older brother. But there is a true older brother who actually bore the true cost for us to be welcomed into our eternal home. See, Jesus is the Son of God, with whom the Father is well pleased. Jesus is the Son of God who rightfully is the heir of everything in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus is the one who said, the only way for these lost people to be welcomed into the Father's home is if I bear the cost myself, and that is what Jesus did. He came to earth to truly bear the cost for our sin. He gave His life on the cross so that by bearing the price Himself, we lost sons and daughters could be called and welcomed into God's family so that He could be compassionate when He sees us return. It's because Jesus bore the cost. And come on, I don't know about you, But I know I've been pretty wayward in my life. I grew up in church. I knew all the hymns. I could recite the verses. But by the time I was 15, 16 years old, I got to go. See you later, God. And off my heart went. Shouldn't we be so thankful that Jesus gave his life on the cross to welcome us back into home, that we have an eternal treasure in heaven, that we can say, you know what? Because he bore the ultimate cost, we can bear the small cost of being part of the church. That it doesn't have to be all about us. It can be all about the mission that Jesus gave us. And we can gladly make these small sacrifices today as we look forward to the great celebration in heaven. Because God is the one, not the son, who is prodigal. God is the one, not his son, who is extravagantly wasteful as he spends his grace on sinners. And we have received that. So because of him, we can be his church on his mission. And we can love people who are far away. That people who are far away would love the church and love Jesus. Let me pray for you. Jesus, thank you for bearing the cost to welcome us into the Father's home. You are almost extravagantly wasteful, it seems, in your grace and your patience and your love for us. Fill our hearts with that grace so that it will pour out into the community and world and lives of people around us. Jesus, I ask that we would have the same impact you had, that the people who are far away, who don't care about religion, who don't care about God, that we would be attracted to them and love them like you do. And that they would be attracted to us and love us because that's the effect you had on the world. Help us to be your church and be on mission for you. Change our hearts with your grace that we would be like you. We ask this for your glory and for the good of our generation. In your name, Jesus. Amen.